Join the movement. Listen to legendary journalist Milton Allimadi talk Sahel states, African leaders, and African youths. Watch the full ad-free reason now, only on www.inevernewtv.com Premium.
Why should the black man in America concern himself, since we've been away from the African continent for 400 years, 300 or 400 years? Why should we concern ourselves? What impact does what happened to them have upon us? Number one, first you have to realize that up until 1959, Africa was dominated by the colonial powers, and by the colonial powers of Europe having complete control over Africa, they projected the image of Africa negatively. They projected Africa always in a negative light. Jungles, savages, cannibals, nothing civilized. And naturally, it was so negative until it was negative to you and me. And you and I began to hate it. We didn't want anybody to tell us anything about Africa, and much less call us an African. And in hating Africa and hating the African, we ended up even hating ourselves without even realizing it.
And there's another thing we need to touch on. There's a notion that Africans sold Africans out. It's a collective talk, right? Especially people born in America. They say, well, you sold us out, this and that, but the leaders sold you out, but not the collective Africans. They present it as if it's all Africans, and I think that quote needs to be clarified.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Without a doubt, we have collaborators within our people anywhere in the world, so that is nothing new. We have collaborators in our communities who are the conduits of feeding our communities with drugs, right? And some of them look like us, right? But would anybody ever accuse that, saying you are the one really that made our community, destroyed our community with drugs? On whose interests are they really acting, even though they do look like us? So we had that kind of situation on the African continent as well. We had collaborators for sure. They were not representative of the entire African community. In fact, if you read once again Rodney's book, he discusses the Africans who resisted, who fought the Europeans and fought African collaborators as well. And that's well documented in his book. And one that is, of course, very well known is Queen Njinga of, what is the ancient Congo, not the current Congo that we know, but the Empire of Congo, normally spelled with a K. And she fought against the Portuguese for many years. So those are what needs to be highlighted. But to think that, okay, first of all, look at the logic behind that criticism that Africans sold other Africans. So let's say there are 5 Africans, right? And a collaborator African comes and picks those particular 5 Africans to be shipped into enslavement. They could have been another set of 5 different Africans, right? Or another set of 10 different Africans. So why should the Africans who were victimized and enslaved, why should there be any hostility between them and the Africans who survived on the continent, who could have been pretty much as one, be the ones who had been enslaved? So there was a randomness behind it, a misfortune, of course, a calamity. But that's the historical context in which this should be seen. And of course, Europeans love that. They use that to divide and rule. Oh, they don't care about you. Oh, they sold you. As if there was a meeting that said, you know what? These Africans are not real Africans. These are actually African Americans. So let's send them to enslavement. No. The African American was an African, and as Malcolm said, is essentially an African all the way, right? But it's because of that conditioning. The European is a master in divide and rule. The European made sure that the African who was brought here, his culture was destroyed, his language was destroyed, his spirituality was destroyed. Everything that would connect him to Africa was destroyed to the extent that now you can actually convince some sisters and brothers that you have no connection with those Africans on the continent because they, quote unquote, sold you after all. So I hope this puts it in some sort of context. There is a short video on YouTube, actually it's an audio by Malcolm X, and Malcolm spoke about this a lot, actually, by the way. It's called "You Cannot Hate the Roots of a Tree Without Hating the Tree." And in many of his writings, Malcolm spoke about that. The European imperialism's attempt to divide Africans in diaspora with Africans on the continent. And to a great extent, they've been very successful at that, just as they've been successful in dividing Africans from other Africans on the continent. And that is why we had the first meeting of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. And today we're in going on 2026, and we still do not have a United States of Africa. Think about that. The European does his homework. And as Rodney says, they always come up with an answer. We need to come up with an answer before they come up with any new answers.